will not believe the rabbit hole I just crawled out of. I was doing my weekly check-in on Alligator Alcatraz to see if there were any new developments that were worth flagging, right? And I saw that on August 14th, the DHS had put out this new document, like an official government document. An emotional document, but official nonetheless. And it's titled Alligator Alcatraz Hoaxes. The whole thing is just so emotional, right? Just a bunch of fragmented sentences, a bunch of unfinished thoughts. But there was this one particularly emotional response to one of the claims that they were refuting that I wanted to flag for you guys because it kind of sent me spiraling. So I'm just gonna quote it verbatim. The claim is that, quote, incinerators are being used for nefarious purposes, end quote. Then they respond by saying, quote, false, in all caps, beyond disgusting. From comparisons to the modern day Nazi Gestapo to now implying incinerators are being used at Alligator Alcatraz for nefarious purposes, the vilification of ICE must stop, end quote. They're saying that it's wrong of others to accuse them of using this equipment for nefarious purposes because that is false. And that's not the same thing as saying we don't have this equipment. You know, look, I can only guess what the DHS thinks everyone else is thinking, but based on historical contexts, I imagine that most people assume that this kind of equipment would be used for one particular thing. I feel like what most people don't realize is that when it comes to this kind of equipment, it actually has multiple legitimate uses. And one of the biggest use cases, especially given the context, is biomedical waste disposal. It's not exactly unheard of to have that kind of machinery at a place like this, especially if there are any medical setup. Like if there's a medical galley, which I believe they said there was at one point, or just any basic medical setup, they would probably need a way to dispose of biomedical waste. I mean, there are federal laws that are very, very strict about how you throw away biological materials, and you can't just throw it in the trash. So naturally, I'm thinking to myself, okay, let's see what you can find out about this equipment. Like, you have to prove it exists before you jump to any conclusions. So I start digging around, like EPA permits, waste management records and contracts and construction records, just basically anything that might have this kind of documentation of equipment attached to it. And I'm going at it for hours, and that's when I find absolutely nothing. Like, zip, nada, nilch. But then I have this idea, and I start thinking to myself, okay, well, if this kind of equipment were to be running, it would probably be really hot, right? Like, really, really hot. Like, I don't know, maybe hot enough that a satellite could detect it? And if that's the case, then surely NASA should have satellites that are floating around in the ether that have the capabilities of monitoring thermal flare-ups. So I went through and I selected all of the satellites that I wanted to cover, and I went through and put on all these different types of filters that would allow for thermal tracking both day and night. Clicking through, right, August 1st, August 2nd, August 3rd. Oh, and what do you know? Looks like we got a heat match. It's a huge thermal flare-up from 2 different satellites. And then I went to check the location because these maps can be a bit deceiving sometimes, right? So I grabbed my little distance tool, plop one guy right here, and the other looks, just around 7 miles. 7 miles might seem like a long ways away, but when you're in the middle of the Everglades, I mean, there's nothing for miles until you get to, that's Miami. Now look, I am no data scientist. I am but a girl with a CSV file and too much curiosity. So I prepared all the data and then I fed it into a data analysis tool, and this is the report I got back. 12 thermal anomalies detected over approximately 11 and a half hours from August 2nd evening to August 3rd morning. The pattern showed what looks to be batch processing, periods of intense thermal activity, then gaps, then more activity. Temperatures were consistent with industrial waste processing operations. 11 and a half hours of sustained burning. That is literally all night, in batch cycles, but all night. It's gotta be coming from somewhere, right? I mean, assuming there's no one else in that area, which there's not within that 10-mile radius, where is it coming from? And so that got me thinking, like, what kind of medical activities might be generating that volume of waste? And then that got me thinking about all of the different hospitalizations that have happened since the camp opened. Like, you know, all of these detainees being taken to Kendall HCA Hospital and then, like, getting random surgeries and coming back, or going for 2 hours and then coming back later. And then I cross-checked this with my notes to see when the last hospitalization I have on record was, which is August 5th. The timing just seems so disgusting, right? Because August 2nd and 3rd, you've got these thermal anomalies flaring up, and then August 5th, you have Luis Manuel Rivas going to the hospital because he was having chest contractions and he was unconscious. allegedly, witnesses were saying that he was unconscious and that the guards didn't know how to check for his pulse and that he needed CPR, and then the DHS was like, no, that's not true. All of this stuff, right? Fact of the matter is that he's not an isolated incident. Why all the biomedical waste if you're going to the hospital? Like, the hospital wouldn't they be the ones that would just get rid of the biomedical waste with their resources? Like, why are you bringing it back with you? Or maybe they're starting some of these medical procedures at the camp, and then if things go wrong, then they get sent to the hospital. Okay, I promise I'm going somewhere with this, okay? Because Elon Musk also announced this year that the University of Miami is going to be the human trial site for his company Neuralink, which is his brain chip company. But yeah, back in June, they did their first official in the Miami hospital surgery, and they put a chip in someone's brain, and now he can play video games with his eyeballs or something like that. Look, and Neuralink's got to get more reps under its belt if it's going to be consumer ready by 2031. So when you have all of this thermal activity that's consistent with medical waste processing, and you have multiple hospitalizations from a detention facility that's all within the vicinity of a brain chip company who needs a lot of volunteers fast, you can forgive me if I get a little nervous. Now, it's important to recognize that proximity does not necessarily equal guilt, and that coincidences don't mean coordination, but patterns, I think, are worth noting. This is all just data, right? And I'm just trying to connect the dots in my head, but at my core, at the pit of my stomach, I know something really bad is going on in there. Like, I know we all know that it's bad, but I have a bad feeling that it's a lot worse than that.